All right, everybody, welcome to how to answer the most important interview question in your job interview. I want to wish you a happy spring. My name is Albert Qian. I'm the founder of Albert's List, Albert's Job Listings and Referrals for those of you who are on Facebook. And we are here to talk about one of the most important things as a part of your job search process, and that is the interview. And one thing, as you know, is more important than ever is the job interview because times are tight. You may notice that while we are not in a recession, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult to find a job these days, especially if you work in tech. And so today I want to just talk about something that I think is incredibly important that every single candidate should articulate while they go through their job search process. Before I get started, a little bit of house cleaning. I will be trying and attempting to read the questions throughout this entire webinar. If I don't get to you, don't be worried. You can always reach out to me on Eventbrite or message me directly on my LinkedIn profile. And this webinar will be recorded, so you can catch it on our YouTube channel, and we will be following up. So let me click to the next slide here. So I want to talk a little bit about our agenda for today. The agenda for today is pretty simple. I want to talk about the state of the job market because if we don't know where we've been, we don't really know where we're going. We're then going to talk about the approach to the job search, and then finally mastering the interview and answering that most important question. And is it really a question, I suppose, as much as it's what you know and how to articulate it. Then we're going to do some Q&A and do some connecting, and I'll have a couple of things for you that you may be interested if you'd like to continue the conversation. A little bit about me first. I'm a product marketer and a job search guy. Many of you probably know me as the job search guy, but I also have a day job as a product marketer, doing a lot of work in tech. You can find that on my LinkedIn. I'm also the founder of Albert's List. We just celebrated 11 years last week, and we are now a community with almost 50,000 people, 49,300 in the Bay Area. And then we go above 50,000 if you consider our communities in Southern California, New York, Texas, Las Vegas, and more. And so people have been successful with our community. They have found work at companies like Google, GoPro, and Twitter along the way through. And so, as we get started today, I wanted to talk about what's on everybody's minds. Today we had the Federal Reserve and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell announced that he was not lowering interest rates. So, that is always a plus. But, these things are always lagging indicators, or rather leading indicators. And what we're more important with is more interested with are the lagging indicators that have been befalling our job market for the last little bit. And what are they? Number one is layoffs, right? So we're now in Q1 2024. If you look to the very right of your bar, and thankfully layoffs have subsided significantly since Q1 of 2023, but they still remain pretty bad as companies continue to blame things such as the macroeconomic trends, rising inflation, rising interest rates as reasons to cut back on their talent. I would say as of late, the biggest thing that we're seeing that is not doing well is issues around the gaming industry, right? So we've seen a lot of gaming companies lay off people in the last couple of weeks. And then there's also this continued exodus from tech as companies try to focus specifically on generative AI, or they go and they are trying to specifically focus on making their companies smaller, leaner, meaner, and maybe a little bit greener so that they can make some of that money back. A lot of companies have looked at Twitter, they've looked at Facebook and Google and seen this year of efficiency play out to be really, really good for investors. And so not only has it put a lot of job seekers on the job market, it has also created a very tight job market. And that's no doubt why many of you are here today as you're trying to figure out how you can break through because interviewing is tough, getting your resume seen is tough, and so forth. And so, just to look at some other data, right? I just mentioned inflation. We are now to 3.2%. This was done in February of last month. As of early last week, inflation is now at 3.2%. It is kind of ebbing at that point. It's supposed to hopefully drop into the 2% range, but who knows when it will go higher than that and really make our lives a whole lot better because it's causing a lot of strife as it relates to our ability to borrow money, to pay our loans back, and so forth, and everything in between. And while that happens, our unemployment rate is steadily moving up since peaking at 3.4% in January and April of last year. It has now creeped all the way back up to 3.9%, all while the economy continues to add jobs at a feverish pace. Last month, we had 275,000 jobs added, albeit many of them were in the government, healthcare, and eating and drinking establishments area. If you're looking for a job in professional services, which includes things like accounting or finance, or if you're looking for a job in information, which is like software development, marketing, those jobs have largely remained flat for the past month or so. So if you're struggling to find a job, if you're wondering where all the jobs are, and you're going a little bit stir crazy about it, you are not alone. The numbers are out and they tell a grim picture, particularly for those of us in the office class. And particularly with all the modifications that the jobs report is undergoing over the last couple of months, it's likely that jobs being added are coming at an even slower pace than originally imagined. And so the other thing to consider as we go into the months ahead is something that's been all on our minds, which is artificial intelligence. You know, if you've used ChatGPT, Gemini, DALL-E, any of these AI tools over the last 16 months, you know that AI has taken over and it's here and it's consuming all of our minds. And according to this chart that you see here, the amount of jobs that will be influenced by generative AI is only increasing in the months and years ahead. And similarly, job cuts impacted by AI are also going to be something of to note as well, right? We noticed that AI has impacted a lot of layoffs in technology, but it's also starting to make its way into warehousing, fintech, pharmaceuticals, and the media as we look at companies that use AI to write their articles or AI to make financial decisions, and even AI to become customer service representatives. A company called Klarna, which is in the buy now, pay later business, stated the other week that it had laid off, after laying off 700 employees last year, it had been able to replace many of those employees in the service sector with with AI bots, which means that they don't have to pay benefits, they don't have to pay a salary, and they're able to make a lot more of that money back, especially since during the zero interest rate period, they were one of the fintech darlings, otherwise known as a unicorn. What else is going on? One other thing to always note, and I know we're almost to the end of Q1 2024 here, is to always look back at the previous quarter and note who is getting funding as a startup. Funding for startups generally means that hiring follows soon after because companies are looking to scale and gain the ROI that many venture capitalists are looking for. And if you look at what happened in 2023 in the fourth quarter, you'll notice that a lot of these technologies and companies that were funded were in the fields of artificial intelligence, sustainability, and then you had a little bit of smattering in mobile telecom, the internet, and then Jewel getting a large, gigantic funding round just to survive as a company. And so if you're looking for a new job, looking for companies like an Anthropic, an Electric Hydrogen, or an Envision Group may be prudent because these companies are flush with cash and in some ways looking to spend it. In the case of Anthropic, I do believe they have released an even recent AI model. And so, you know, that company continues to accelerate in its growth, and it's going to be important to note. Forward forecasts. So one thing as we end each of these sections is kind of a bumpy road ahead. You know, I had said in one of these previous webinars as the year began that it was a hopeful time in the future. And that hopeful time has not quite come yet because interest rates are still high. Employment is getting a little bit bumpier as layoffs persist here in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. And AI remains the place to be, but also has many challenges as companies figure out whether it's too expensive to maintain or whether they want to fire workers. Recession worries also continue. And on top of that, the big whammy that we have here in the United States, for those who are watching in America, is the 2024 election. While we have former President Trump and current President Biden going head to head once again, it remains to be seen whether the election will be disrupted by technology such as AI in the form of deepfakes and any other kinds of AI images. However, at the end of the day, despite all these challenges and headwinds being things that we think about, all of this is speculation. And as I say, underlined, you are still in control of your own career. And for those of you who are watching live, thank you for being in control of your career and taking the first step, or maybe the second, third, or fourth step to figuring out what it takes to find your next job. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to approach the job search. And so this is a framework that I've been using for a little bit that I leverage when it comes to talking to job seekers and organizing your job search. And the way that it's inspired is that it comes from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as many of you know, is a pyramid shaped diagram that shows what it is that individuals look for when they are looking to be at their best and highest selves. It goes from the bottom to the top. And so, what's important about this is that you must feel physiologically safe, generally safe, a level of love and belonging before you realize a sense of self actualization. And to some degree, your career can look the same way. And this is in the form of what I like to call the hiring hierarchy. The hiring hierarchy is similar in that sense, is that it describes the job search in a manner where you have all the basic things at the bottom. And then as you move towards the top, you become more seasoned in your job search and are able to share what it is that has made you so successful as you move forward. However, if you're someone who's more of an entry level worker, so you might be somebody who has who can work on their resilience, their attitude, their level of commitment, or you may be somebody who's somewhat experienced and looking for skills, understanding the fundamentals, knowing what's at stake, or you could be a corporate leader today who's trying to figure out the dynamics of your career. You have a vision of what you'd like to accomplish, or you're able to measure and lead in terms of where you're llooking for. So, where are we looking at the hiring hierarchy today? We're looking at what's at stake. And so, the most important question that I wanted to that this presentation answers today, and the most important interview question that you can answer in your job interview, is to understand what's at stake. And this is a really general question that has a lot of sub questions here. So we're going to move into each of the different elements that you need to articulate as you go through your interview so that you can best understand what's important. So, before we talk about answering the most important question in the many ways that are necessary, I want to talk about how to master the job interview. There's a lot of different elements to mastering the job interview, and the way that I see the interview process today is that it's about three things. Number one, it's about reducing risk, right? So, when it comes to looking for a job, unfortunately, companies are not charities, and if they didn't need to hire you, they probably would not hire you in the first place. Unfortunately, we're not that special, and we live in a world where companies are focused on maximizing profit and maximizing return for their investors. And so, as many of us go, we are generally risks to employers because they want to know things like why we departed from our last job. They want to know how we've managed conflict. They want to know how we manage ambiguity. They want to know what our next career move is and whether we fit into their plans as much as they fit into ours. On the opposite side, a job interview is also about increasing excitement because when a company does want to hire, they want to hire the best candidate available and they want to find avenues of excitement, as I usually say in many of my presentations, for ways to understand where it is that you can be the best person possible. They're looking for aligned experiences. They're looking for someone who works in a similar industry, especially in this market. They're looking for somebody who has organized thoughts and has created impact previously and can copy that impact in their new organization. As an ideal candidate, they are the person that are looking, you're the person that they're looking for to give the right answers, for someone to create no problems, solve all their problems, and cause no problems at the same time. And then there's personality fit, and they're hoping that you start with little to no training, and most importantly, visionary thinking. And so, visionary thinking is the puzzle piece that we're talking about today to understand where you fit in with any job that you go into. When you go into any job and you try to understand what it is that exists and why it matters, you want to answer the question, why would that job exist in the first place? You want to understand, what is the company trying to accomplish and what in that market? Who does the job impact at the end of the day? Are you speaking to customers? Are you figuring out who your colleagues are? Are you somebody who's serving other people internally? What can you do to be impactful? And again, as a puzzle piece, where do you fit in together with everybody else? And so, as we look at understanding what's at stake, the question that we're answering today is not only what's at stake for the job, but what's at stake specifically for you, the industry you're about to work in, the company that you're going to be working at, the colleagues with whom you're working for, the boss who you'll be reporting up to, and the customers whom you'll be serving. I see a question in the comments here that says, can I add a sentence around why I would use the word excitement? So when I think about excitement, and in a lot of ways, what excitement truly means here is alignment. But I talk about excitement because I think of it in ways of just that kind of conversation that you have in a job interview when it feels like a conversation. Excitement emanates from being able to walk into a job interview and know that when you sit down across that prospective hiring manager, that they look down your resume, they're very happy with what they see, they're excited to see what happens next, and they know that you are a perfect fit for that job. Yeah. So, going back to this, we're going to talk a little bit about the next few slides about all the things that are at stake whenever it is you go into a job, but more so how to articulate this in the interview process so that you may become the best fit and that you understand and show that you've done your homework as you go through the work that you do. Um, Mindset slide. Where are we looking at mindset here? Um, okay. I'm not sure where you're talking about mindset. Um, the next one. Okay. Back. This one. Okay. Um, Okay, yes. So creating an ownership mindset. So what I want to speak about specifically here is when you go into the job interview, the ownership mindset, and what I mean here is that you are thinking like the CEO as if you were hiring. And you want to understand as a candidate for this job, you want to know why this job exists in the first place, what they hope to accomplish with that job, how this job will impact everyone around them, what you can do to be impactful, and how you can generate an entire vision around this job so that you can be the best fit for the role. And so that's all encompassed by an ownership vision where even though you may not have the job yet, you act as if you have the job and that you're ready to start and that you see forward 3 months, 6 months, a year, what the outcomes will be. Okay, so how each area sees the stakes. So we've talked a little bit about here about what's at stake for you, the industry, the company, your colleagues, your boss, and your customers. And so we're going to talk about how you have to view what's at stake throughout this entire interview process and how everyone fits in. And the first person is you. I think you know that you all know this as job seekers and working professionals that you understand what's at stake for yourself at the very, very best. When it comes to you, you definitely want to know what's at stake because you care about your career growth and why you're taking a particular role. You want to know what's at stake with regards to your elevator pitch because you're going to go to networking events, you're going to meet people, and you're going to share what it is that you're capable of and why you are important. You know what's at stake in regards to your skill set. what your interests are, and what kind of perks you want from the job, including your salary. And so a lot of this at the end of the day comes down to a lot of the identification you do before you even start a job. The reason why I put you at the very center of that diagram is because it's important for us to talk about being self aware of what it is that we want to look for next. Most importantly, it's also important for us to understand how what our interests are intersect with the employer. In a good market, it's easy to find employers that pay lots of money, that have all of our interests and have the best perks because they're looking to hire a lot of people, and it might be hard to hire people. But in a tougher market, it may be interesting to manage those expectations because you want to be able to find that job and move forward with getting more experience. As a result, in some ways, the level of importance for what's at stake for you is fairly low because as it relates to the broader company, anybody who is an employee is a cost center. And so, as a cost center, we must do our best to ensure that we bring as many solutions and as many perfect outcomes for the business as we possibly can that we're going to go and work for. And so, some questions when you ask yourself what it is that at stake for you, you have to ask yourself what you care about at work, what you're interested in doing, why do you want to work at a particular company, and where do these interests intersect with the employer. Now, I realize that there are those of us who just want a job for the sake of having a job. And it's still important to answer these questions because if you want one of those types of jobs that's really relaxing, you also need to do your research here so you can create the right search list. Questions for the interviewer that sets you up for success that you have to answer as you go through this part of the interview process. And as you write these things out, or as you read these things out and listen to me speak, I want you to open a Word doc or even grab a piece of paper nearby you and write down some of these questions and start thinking some of these answers because these are all interview questions that are going to matter a lot. So, for example, you're going to have to learn how to answer the question, why do you want to work here? Here being the company that you're interviewing at. Tell me about yourself, or what do you know about us? And the more you know and have knowledge of these answers, the easier it is going to be in your interview process because this helps you get through the first hump of the interview, which tends to be factual questions. And as you do this, you'll find inner employers that align with your interests. The second person that you're going to meet along the interview chain when it comes to understanding what's at stake is your boss. Your boss is going to be the person who you report to, who is responsible for your goals, and has an interest in you succeeding along the way as you take their role. Not only does your boss have your goals in mind, they also have their goals in mind, as well as any other reports they may have, and the interests of the executives or bosses that they report up to, depending on the size of the organization. And so, as you move into the interview process, it's up to you to understand what your boss's goals are, how you align them, what pressures they face, and how you can jointly help each other. And the level of importance in being able to communicate what it is that's at stake for them is very, very high. Whether you're taking a contract job or a full time job, you really want to have an understanding of what it means to help your boss look really good. So, for example, if you are working as a marketer, your boss may be a senior marketing manager or even the chief marketing officer, if you're in a really small company, who's looking to create marketing results. Well, if you understand that it's the results that are at stake, it allows you to work backwards and understand what it is that you need to accomplish in order to be successful there. These questions are for us to ask our bosses, but it's also up to us to be able to answer them and also answer them within the questions that they ask us. So the questions you're going to receive from the boss during the interview process are going to include situational questions and vision-based questions. Your boss is going to ask you what it looks like one to tell them one time where you might have been successful, or tell them one time where you maybe failed and what you learned from that failure. You may also get vision-based questions. So, for example, Say we hired you to be in this role. What would be something that you would do to make a particular result happen? And that will be important because it'll showcase to them that you are thinking like a visionary and that you know what's at stake for the organization. So the exercise for you here is to research your future boss whenever you have an interview and understand who they are and to go through the interview process and understand what their priorities are and what their vision is as they try to accomplish whatever their goals may be. The next person in the interview chain that you're going to meet are your colleagues. Your colleagues are people who work with you, either in the same team or on different teams to accomplish similar goals or different goals, but overall goals that help the company. And for your colleagues, what's at stake for them are, as we said, their goals, the metrics they want to reach, the crossover that you have with the work that they do, and the overall health of the company. And so when you get to the interview process with your colleagues, it's generally after the hiring manager. And what you want to understand what's at stake with them is how you collaborate with them and what pressures they face on a day to day part of the job. This is a very cultural question as well as a very operational question. And their influence in the interview process can be somewhat high because they want to know that they can work with someone who is pleasant and somebody who that they can get along with. And so, questions in the interview process that set you up for success that you're going to receive are questions like situational questions, STAR method questions, including tell me about a time when you drove a project to successful completion. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with another colleague of yours and how you overcame it. Tell me how you collaborate others. Tell me how you stay organized. Those are all questions that your colleagues will want to know because if they're going to work directly with you, they're going to want to find the most frictionless way to do so. And so these are also some of the more easy interview process parts because it allows you to find common ground with your peers who are generally going to be easier to get along with because they are not your boss and they don't have as much at stake, but you do have as much at stake in terms of finding success together. The next piece I want to talk about and what's at stake is your company, the company that you're interviewing for. And so you generally might be just thinking that you're one person out of a couple of thousand, a couple hundred within a company. And so what impact can you truly make? And the answer to that question is that you can make a lot of impact at the end of the day. As somebody being hired into a company, you're being brought in because you fulfill a particular solution to a problem that's been ongoing. And so, what's at stake for your company is today's priorities and what need to get done, current challenges with the company and what they face in terms of their headwinds or what's pushing them forward, current threats in terms of competition and the dynamics of the market, your value as it fits within that company with the skills, the experience, and the impact that you can bring, and then tomorrow's vision for where the company would like to go. And so, in researching the answers to these questions, these can be a combination of questions that you ask the company, but also the company can reveal to you either through the interview or if you look online through public news. So, what's at stake here is to understand where is the company in its journey and where are you joining the company in this journey? And how can you add value? Is there a possibility of you leaving the impact that you intend to do so? Or are there bigger challenges that lie ahead? And the level of importance to understanding what's at stake for this company is extremely high. And what you should do is you should do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat analysis of the company and figure out where you fit in at any given time. And so you can do that by looking up Google News and seeing what they have in the news. You can look up their press releases and what they're saying about their products. If there are analyst reports, you can understand where they are in that market. If you have colleagues who work there, understanding from them, either through one on one conversations or even going online on Glassdoor or Blind, can reveal so much about what's going on with an organization in particular. And then the next thing that comes after that that helps keep a company afloat are your customers and investors. And so, whether you work internally for a company serving other employees or you serve external customers, everybody at the end of the day has customers and investors whom they need to please in order to keep business going. The most important thing about customers and investors throughout your organization is that customers and investors keep your lights on at the end of the day. Without your customers, you go out of business and we all wouldn't have jobs. And so, what's at stake for you as you land your new job and interview for that job is to understand a few things. You need to understand their vision and what they want to do with your product. You want to understand what their gripes are and what continued problems they're having and how you might solve that problem. You want to understand their needs because they wouldn't buy from you unless they had a problem in the first place. And then, of course, you want to understand their value, which is generally in dollar signs. And the level of importance here is extremely high, as in the aforementioned items. And so the questions in the interview that will help you understand who your customers are going to be understanding how your role fits within all the roles that are available, and then answering questions around collaboration, understanding situations of where you've dealt with customers in the past and handled conflict, and then really we're working on understanding how you fit with them as it relates to your role. So if you're somebody who's working with other people internally, you'll want to know how you'll collaborate. If you're working with someone externally, you may want to talk to other salespeople and understand, why do customers come to us? And on the flip side, why do they leave us? All important questions to ask as you go along the way. And the final question that you're going to answer around what's the most important at stake for your company or for you is, what's at stake for your industry that you're about to move into. And this isn't so much as the interview, but it's as much for yourself as you try to understand why this industry is going through what it's going through to have to hire new people. So this includes the vision of where the industry is headed. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Are there advantages to being here? So, for example, working in AI is probably really, really good right now, while being a data entry person may not be so much, because some of these roles are diametrically opposed and impacting each other to create job losses. What is the status quo of the industry, and how can your presence be important here? And so, questions in the interview that set this up for success are general questions and vision questions. General questions that may ask, what do you know about this industry and what's going on here? Or vision questions of, now that you see what's going on and in this role, where can you go in the future? And all of these are important because they show that you've done your homework and that you're not just looking for a job to look for a job. And so in the exercise here, you're looking for how you'd fit within that industry given your role, and sharing that information either in the first round interview or throughout the rest of the interview process with the hiring manager and your colleagues to show that you have that level of domain knowledge. And so, in understanding where we are here, we want to put it all together and give an understanding of what this all means. As we've shown throughout, when you go into the interview, you're answering the questions of what's at stake for each of the different individuals, entities, and organizations that you're going to be working for. You're going to want to know what's at stake for the industry and where the industry is headed and where you fit in. You're going to understand how the company fits within that direction and whether you're joining a company that's growing, struggling, or somewhere in between. Inside the company, you want to understand what's at stake for your colleagues, how you'll best collaborate with them, and what they want from you and what you'll want from them. Additionally, you'll also want to know what's at stake for your boss. Your boss is the one directly interviewing you and is going to want to know what it is that you can do for them and how they can best serve you so that you can both be successful. In addition, you also want to know what's at stake for your customers, why they buy, why they don't buy, why they go to your competitors, and what their biggest gripes are, or what they need to see from you in order to invest more money. When I look at status quo, by the way, under the industry, we have question here for status quo. It's what's the current situation within the industry? So is it ripe for disruption, or is it within a time point where everything is going swimmingly and you're entering in as a plug and play employee that's going to allow everything to keep on going the way it's been? Um, and so and so really that's understanding the current situation and moving forth with whether you know it's growing, whether it's not growing, and what contributions can be made. And so as we look through this, there's an interview timeline that you have to understand to see where it is that you share a lot of this information. When you are at the very beginning of the interview process, you're demonstrating that you know what's at stake for the industry and sometimes what's at stake for the company. When you're when you're having your interview with the boss, you demonstrate what's at stake for management. You demonstrate a sense of industry knowledge. You demonstrate what's at stake for the company. When you're speaking with colleagues, you're demonstrating collaborative interests and company understanding, as well as what's at stake for customers internally and externally, so you can best serve them. And then if you have an executive interview later on, you're demonstrating that you understand an overall shared vision. You understand what's going on within the industry. You understand at a high level what your colleagues need, and so that you can show that comprehensive map. And so it all starts with a plan. At the end of the day, you have to ask the right questions to the right audience. You have to care about what it is that your stakeholders care about, and you have to align with the right vision that shows what you know. In addition, you also have to speak the right language and have the right story or a near right story that can show that you have a vision for what's next and move and help the organization move forward. And so all of these, in terms of understanding what's at stake, are key to being able to give a good interview and show that you've done your homework. A lot of your colleagues and a lot of your competition today generally go into your interview thinking about what's in it for themselves. And while that's important, because we did talk about what's at stake for you, it is not the most important because you are being hired to solve a problem. And the closer that you can get to solving that problem while aligning with understanding what's at stake, the more successful you will be in your job interviews. And so, with that, I wanted to provide some next steps in terms of what's next. What we're offering today, in addition to the content in this presentation, is something to help you along the way with your job interview. We have something called the Job Seeker Survival Kit, which is 39 videos across 49 hours of total content that includes mock interviews, content on what to do when you get hired, content that will help you stay engaged at work, and overall a very, very extensive collection of content that will help you with your job search. I'll go ahead and post that today. It's $1,600 worth of content that we're offering for $17 through May 31st of this year so that you can get what you need to do to get into your job search this spring. In addition to the content that we have here, we also have ongoing office hours where you have the chance to speak with me on an annual basis. For $20 over 26 weeks, or every other week, we host Zoom office hours where you can come in and ask any question that you want, whether it's about your job search, whether it's resume editing, or some place that you want to come to just vent and talk about where you've been struggling. In addition, if you're already in a job and you want to ask questions, you can also come here too, and we can talk through everything as well. At the very end here, I want to also offer the opportunity to stay in touch. First bullet point is my LinkedIn. Feel free to let me know that you found me here on this webinar today. Second, feel free to also join Albert's List, where you can network with almost 50,000 other professionals and get involved with conversations, apply for jobs, and talk to anybody else who's going through the same challenges as you. In both, please indicate that you found us or found me through this particular webinar, and we'd love to have you. Without further ado, I wanted to thank you again for your time today. I appreciate you joining us for this webinar, and learning more about what it means to understand what's at stake as you go through the job interview process. Happy to take any questions now and see if anybody has anything that they'd like to share. Okay. All right. Doesn't seem like we have anything at the moment. So I wanted to thank everybody for their time, and I wish you well and a really good luck on your job search. And we'll be following up with the recording as well as the other resources we shared. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your week.